Jeff, start us off with a prayer, would you?
I'd love to.
Sure. Yeah, we want everybody to speak into a microphone because we're actually recording this. And Josh, thank you for catching people when they're speaking as much as possible. Go ahead.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, this is such a wonderful place of love and a place where we just come closer to you every time we're here and we gather in your name, Lord. So thank you for filling this place with your spirit, with your wisdom, with your goodness. God, I don't know all the details about what we're going to be talking about today, but I do know that the few times I've had a chance to talk with Jesse, I love the guy. He's unbelievably awesome and just feels like such a natural part of this church. And so I pray that you're here today. I pray that you fill this room with your wisdom and your guidance, and that what we discuss today is your will, and that we figure out what we need to, Lord, and not in our own strength or our own power, but in yours, that your Holy Spirit rest upon us. Amen. Thank you, God, and in your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for being here. Honestly, just the fact that as many people showed up as have blesses my socks off right there. Right? It's because this is a really important moment. You're going to hear why in 1 second. But I just want to thank you very much for caring enough to take time to be here. Thank you. Okay? Love you. All right. What we're going to be talking about, I need to give you I'm hoping to do this in about 10, 15 minutes. You guys just pray for me, okay? All right. Here's what I want you to see. I want you to see me, and then I want you to see strategic team. Strategic team is something that we have had at this church ever since the beginning. And as we've moved more and more to a volunteer paradigm, we actually tried to do strategic team in a more volunteer paradigm way. And I'm sure we will try again. But there were some problems with it. And bottom line, it just boils down to we're doing so much in terms of getting people to raise up that if we don't have people that are spending full time helping them raise up, that it doesn't succeed. See what I mean? There's just a lot of stuff that comes along with raising people up into ministry, supporting them and helping them in politics and all the various things. So it just takes a certain amount of team builders. And you know this because this is what we said in the beginning. This strategic team has everything to do with how to implement teams and the idea that we, the church, are the ones doing the ministry. This is not about, these are not pastors, these are team builders, and they're up here in order to help us all enter into our ministry in the best possible way, and it just takes a little bit of background to do it. Now, what I want to show you, I don't have my clicker, so...
He said it's up here, on the wires.
It's on the wires, thank you. All right, so here's what I want to show you here real quick. Okay, does everybody know what Strength Finders is? If you're on a team, you do, because we use it exhaustively on teams. Gallup spent tons of money, thousands of organizations, and what they did is they said, what makes a team work and a team not work? And they figured out that there were these giftings that come in these certain areas. See it? Execution, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Each one of those is a category, okay? And so what you got to have is you got to have somebody that's going to actually do it and be able to execute it. You got to have somebody that's going to influence people to get involved. You got to have people that care about them, not just the project. And you got to have somebody that's thinking about what the things are that we're supposed to be doing. See that? It's really pretty simple, even though there's a lot of stuff on it. And I can help you to read this really simply. And if you'll look in your pockets, I need a packet myself, please. Oh, you don't have packets? Oh, they need to be handed out. I'm sorry. I changed that around. So you need to give me one, too. This is going to be on your packet. This will be table 4, and there's a reason why I did the things the way I did. Thank you very much, Joe, for helping. Does everybody know Joe yet? Johanna? She is unbelievable. She is the new Karen, and Karen's here, too, I think, and she's such a blessing. But Joe's come in and just rocked the house. Yes.
She has to be on this strategic team.
I need a packet. Could somebody just grab me a packet?
But I'm good at this thing.
All right.
I'm an expert.
All right, now here's what I want you to see. Before, and Aunt Wanda wasn't even on here, so it's actually worse then. But here's what we had before JJ, okay? You can see what's the problem with that list. There's 2 problems with it. Number 1, we don't have good distribution and execution, right? Anybody who's been here for a long period of time knows the number 1 drawback of Lake Sam in its history has been that we don't tend to execute as well as we need. We have great ideas, we do relational, we get people excited about it, but then we don't actually execute it. I'm on this page right here when you get your packet, okay? This is almost all of them that you're going to see, okay? So the point is that you can see we're pretty good on ideas, we're pretty good on people, we're okay on influencing. You really want 3 in each one, and you got to have more than 2. Because if you only have one person, or essentially one person in a particular area, then as long as they're involved in that particular thing that you're doing, it'll do well. But as soon as they're not involved, then that area will fall down and you'll fail in that particular part of that project. Do you understand? So here's what we did. I looked at this sheet. Is Scott Chin still here? I hope so. I want to shout a kudo out to him. Anyway, he might not be. But I went to Scott Chin and I said, look at our problem and find me somebody with 3 executive gifts. I don't care who they are. I want somebody with 3 executive gifts. And so he went out and found JJ. See the blue? See that? She has 3 executive gifts. Now, this is very important. Ever since JJ came on, this church has made huge strides forward in terms of being more organized, in terms of being more long-range planning, in terms of all kinds of things having to do with execution. She's done a great job with it, right? But I went to Dave Cole with this chart, and I said, Dave, we're still having a problem, and I don't think we're going to make it, and I need you to tell me how to get out of this problem, because I can't get out of the problem. And he looked at this chart. He did not know, by the way, Jesse's strengths at all, but he looked at this chart. We talked about it. He looked at it, and he said, you still got a problem for sure. And he said, I got the solution. Literally, as we were talking, it was like he said, God whispered in my ear. That's the way that he said it. He said, God just whispered in my ear what the solution was. And I went, great, bring it on. And at that point in time, remember, we were looking to try and hire somebody that was more at the Joe or Karen level. But then what he did is that God said to him about Jesse. Now look at that chart right there. Because I want to tell you, if you run a business and you know anything about Strengths Finders, you would kill to have that chart. You'd kill to have that. Look at it. Not only does it have 3 people in every single area, so that there's lots of duplication to where in any one area where somebody might not be involved, you're still getting it from somebody. But look at that. Strategic thinking, which is strategic team, is what it is, and that's super strong. Relationship building, we care about people first. That's great. Influencing, that's our weakest area, but nonetheless, it's still strong. And execution, look what we did. We literally changed the ship. We changed the course of direction of Lake Sam by hiring JJ and then Jesse. Now, here's what the problem is. Again, I'm trying to go fairly quick so that we have time for questions and so on. But I just want you to catch this. Now, here's what happens, okay? I want to make sure I'm on the right slide. Okay? Here's what happened. We hired Jesse in March. Literally in April, God started talking to me and saying, I want you to get out of all the business stuff, which he was changing me so much. I talked about it in the sermon a second ago. He was changing me so much that I was happy to get out of all the business stuff. But I want you to see something. Take Jesse out of that arrangement, and could I have done it? Here, let me go back 3 and just show you. Well, I guess I don't have the one with just it's in here, but anyway, sorry. But take Jesse out of that, and you can see that team would not have succeeded. In other words, where I start going over to ministry and raising up preachers and doing the pastoral, which I'm really loving doing and which the church really needs me to do, and which frankly helps the church quite a bit on a very practical level, because when I'm pastoring well, more people are staying and more people are giving. And some of this conversation is going to have that sort of coarseness of business to it, but some of that needs to be in here because we're trying to figure out how to do this. So that happened in April to me, and right as Jesse came in, I started working with him on some projects, and I started saying, I feel like God's doing something, and it got so much so that in May, I came to these 4 people, which was now possible because we now have, looking at the 4 people, we now have a really good team that I actually can give it to, and then before that we didn't. And now we got this excellent, that's still a really good graph. You see how good it is still? So I think it's my opinion, strongly, that God's the one who built that team. precisely to move me out and to move the church to other people doing this stuff so that it wasn't all on me anymore. See what I mean? And those of you who've been around a while know what that means. So what happened is that there's this excellent team. Now, in May, before I got sick, in May, I said to this team, I want you to take everything that the church does and start divvying it up amongst the four of you, all the business of the church. And when we did that, I had in my mind a 1.5 to 2 year transitional period where I would still be doing things and we'd be moving slowly towards something, right? Well, what happened? In June, I got sick. And I didn't just get sick, I got sicker than I've ever been in my whole life. And I literally was on drugs all summer long. I was on summer from June until halfway through September. I was completely out of the picture. Now, I want you to think about that. What was God doing? He was making them a team. See, when I removed, I tend to talk a lot. When I'm in a room, the things tend to revolve around what I want to talk about. I don't like that. It's just, whatever, right? I got command as one of my things, and that's one of the things that is. So it just happens. But here's the bottom line. When I'm not in the room and they're supposed to be a team, how do they function with me not in the room? Well, has anybody ever gone through a reorg? A total reorg? How long does it take to do a reorg? A real reorg. Not a Microsoft one that happens every couple of days. I'm talking about a real reorg where you're actually reorging. You're going from me doing this thing to me not doing this thing and for other people doing this thing. How long is that going to take? Quite a while, right? Now, I want to take another dimension to you. What's this team supposed to be doing ultimately? Building teams. It would be so much easier if we just told them, take the ministries and make them run. They're all capable and qualified and could have done it easily. But here's what they have to do. They have to build other teams. So what's one of the primary requirements that they have to be? A team. But they don't even know each other. Jesse's brand new to them, so they have no idea what he's good at and bad at. They don't know anything. JJ's been doing this thing over here, and we haven't ever functioned like this. So these guys on this level don't really even know each other. And if they're going to be a team that's going to build the right kind of team, they have to be one more thing. They have to really love and respect each other. They have to come to know each other so well, their strengths and their weaknesses. It's real easy to say in the abstract, you and I are going to do a project, and I know your strengths and we like each other and so on. But then actually have that start to really matter. And all of a sudden you start discovering all kinds of things about each other, right? So what happened when I was sick was God was giving a 1.5 transition, a 3, 4, 5 month crash course where these guys were having to do this, find out what each other's strengths and weaknesses were, find out how they felt about each other, find out how they operate together, find out who tends to run a meeting well, who doesn't, who tends to, how can we lean on each other? If you're around our staff, and many of you have been, one of the things that you know about our staff is we become a seamless whole. Even though I've got a job description and somebody else has a job description, somebody else has a job description, that's not really how we function. We don't really even have job descriptions, to be truthful. What we do is we've each got strengths and everybody knows what each other's strengths is. And like a really good team, we're just leaning on each other for what each other can do. And that's how we function. Well, these guys had to all of a sudden start functioning that way because the whole church was going to be on their shoulders. Right? And quickly. And by the way, I can say nothing but praise God for him making me sick. I think it's the best thing that could have ever happened to this church because it took something that I would have done poorly over a 1.5 years, and it made it happen now. So by about November, they were pretty much done. December kicks in. There's not much you can do in December. You can't recruit teams. You can't start new projects. So December was just sort of do December work. And then comes January. Jesse gets married. Now, Jesse comes back, and for the first time, we're able to do what I'd asked for in May, which was a real, not just a made-up one, not just you take this, you take this, you take this, but a real God-led distribution. So what I want you to do is, I want you to see this sheet. I don't know why it's not coming up. I want you to see this sheet. Okay? We left it long because we wanted to, even though it makes not an elegant packet, we left it long because we wanted you to see how much stuff there is. And you'll see under any one particular category, like adult discipleship, there's small groups, there's threefolds, there's men's ministry, women's ministry, discipleship path. You see that? Now, what we're doing with this thing is we're not saying, hey, you're the new pastor of that group, you're the new head of that group, you're the one that's responsible for that group. What we're doing is we're saying, you're the one who's responsible for building the teams that are going to do these ministries. See how it goes? And now what they've done is, through getting to know each other and through what God had done in terms of reorging and building them, they really did know why each person was getting each thing. And this is still in process. There's still a few areas that we haven't quite got nailed down, missions being one of them. Okay? But the bottom line is what we do have is we've got this incredible distribution now of this list. And you can see how many things there are. And the first thing I would like you to note is, feel free to take one person out of there and tell me how it goes. Because here's why we're here today. The team finally got together this whole thing, and it now looks like this. Okay, those things translate right over to here, and here's the strategic team, and here's what they're doing, and there's backup people in each one of these areas, and who they're going to lean on for other things, and there's all kinds of sophistication in this that doesn't show in this simple little chart, but you can see it's a pretty complex thing. A church our size is not a simple thing. It takes a certain amount of heft and horsepower and differing in mixes, and so here's the point. We're looking at this team, and right about the time that Jesse comes back and he's going, I'm married and I'm ready and let's go, and the whole 9 yards, and we give him the thing, we run out of money because we did a fundraiser for him last March. And now we're out of money. Or about to run out of money. There's still a little bit left, but that's it, right? So all of a sudden we're looking at this, we're going, I can't believe it. We're going to get to where the team has by God's hand been built, been put together, been figured out all kinds of, the amount of work that they did in these months when I was sick was extraordinary in order to come together and become one and all this kind of stuff. It was a hard road. There was a lot of stuff to get through, and they got through it beautifully, and God got them through it. And so here they are, and right about the exact time that we can really start leaning on it, what's going to happen? We're going to have to get rid of a person. I'm not saying necessarily we do Jesse, but that's just, and all of a sudden we're back to a list that I don't know how to do it anymore. I don't know how I don't have to get back involved again, and even if I do get involved, I'm not going to do it well. I'm still working 18-hour days just on the pastoral stuff. It's been a real problem. I'm trying to work on that. But the bottom line is I look at that list and I just say, can we actually succeed with that list? And I'd go back to Dave Cole and say the same thing. I don't think so. Now, I need to go to another level with you here. How was it that we expected Jesse to get paid for in a year? I'm going to take JJ as an excellent example of it, even though I want to make it clear. Every single person at a high level that we've hired, we've done the same way. We did a fundraiser for them, and by the time the year was up, the money was there, and we kept going. In some capacity, that's close enough to the truth to where I can say that with confidence. Okay? Now, what happened with Jesse that we don't have the money? Well, I want to take JJ as the example. When JJ came in, Lake Sam Kids was at a stretched out point, and the first thing that happened when she came in is that I thought there'd be a whole bunch of people that would be happy somebody was there to help them, and just for every good human reason, they all went, I'm tired, I need to quit, I need to just stop, and JJ was holding the bag alone. But then what did she do? Over the next year, she started building a program. She started recruiting people. A lot of the people that she recruited were not people that were necessarily involved before. Some of them were, some of them weren't. Those people that weren't, those were the kind of people that had trouble staying at Lake Sam before because they would come in and love this church because this church is a great church and the families and the relationships are spectacular. The ideas are amazing. The execution, if you're a guy that needs it to actually get done, this was a tough place to be. And so there's people that moved on that could really be helpful right now. JJ has those gifts. Those people come into a big program, right? There's a lot of people it takes to run Lake Sam Kids. And all of a sudden, they're getting this really fine executive support, and they're getting somebody that's full-time and that's paid and that's there to help them and to raise them up and to train and to do all the things that she's doing. And the reason why we had money to pay for Jesse or for JJ by the time we got done with the year was because there were simply, and I'm being a little bit business crass, right? But let's be practical. The reason why we had the money was because there was more people here to pay for her because they were involved in her ministry. And they were tithing and giving money. And so there was more money to pay. So why didn't that happen with Jesse? Tell me what Jesse's done. This is not his fault. Here's what happened. I had 2-3 huge projects for him to start with in March when we hired him, and we were starting to do them in April. And then in May, God said, no, you're supposed to be going to this team. And so at that point in time, I couldn't give him any big projects. Why? Because a team is about to form to decide that. And I couldn't give him a bunch of big projects and get him halfway down the road on some big project and then have the team say, no, you're not the right person to do that. And this was arbitrary and we're being hampered. The team had to figure out who needed to do what. So the fact of the matter is Jesse's been doing all kinds of stuff. And I want to make something very clear. Dave Cole, I was talking about the execution problem to him and everything else, what he said to me very clearly was he said, if you tell Jesse what to do, if you give him goals and measurables, he will do them instantly. And I can tell you, in a year of working with him, every single time that I've given him a project, he delivered that project in about a quarter of the time that we'd allotted for the project to be done. Every single time, including the one I'm about to get to, which is huge and happening right now and is the most important thing I think the church is doing right now. So the fact of the matter is he's been everything that Dave Cole advertised him to be, but we put him in a bit of a difficult spot because suddenly he was having to help build this team, but unlike the rest of the team, that had a full plate with ministries they were doing, we hadn't given him anything yet because we were going to let the team give it to him. See the principle? So he's not actually adding to our numbers at that point in time. He's in a deep process of putting together a team to do other things. So here's the things that now fall onto Jesse's plate. This is what the team has now decided. And there's always going to be a little flex. But his top priorities, youth. Okay, those of you who are doing youth ministry, you know how important this was. We were at a pretty interesting place last fall and everything else, but then God started bringing in what? A bunch of resources, a bunch of people. And now what does the staff do? The staff is bringing somebody to help build that team and to spend that time to help that team really come together. Youth is being transformed in this church. And I got to tell you, youth stands a chance if the trajectory of youth continues, youth will be the most outreach part of this church by far. The way that we're ministering to kids in the community right now, the heart that we've got for them, and there's a lot of challenges. But what's happening in youth right now, what God's doing in youth, what he's building in youth is extraordinary. And I'm telling you, I think it's probably a year from really starting to see the full fruit, and Tamara's deeply involved, and she's shaking her head, yeah. But the point is there's a person now who's in there from the strategic team and a bunch of other resources God's built, and he's rebuilding that whole youth thing from the inside out, and it's an incredible thing that's going on. So that's a huge project, and that will end up in more people being here, not because a lot of the youth kids, their parents aren't going to come and they're not going to tithe. Let's be real. They're from homes that's not, hopefully they come in, and we're certainly going to be going after them, right? But the point is where he's going to have an effect is the people who are serving in youth, which is getting to be more and more and more people, and they're going to start to see, and they're going to start to say, wow, good ministry happening here. He'll start bringing people in, recruiting, doing this kind of thing, building up the team, right? But now I want to take you to HR. I want you to just, briefly, I'm going to skip over HR right now, excuse me. Sunday morning, you've seen him doing here. Here's an example of what Jesse has done that's incredible. For years, I've been saying I want a volunteer service coordinator. And our staff people always did it. Why? Because they couldn't recruit anybody. I came to Jesse at one time. I said, I want you to do this. I want you to do service coordinating for the first couple months because I want you to understand what the job is. And then he came to me and he said, I think I get what the job is now. And then he said, can I start recruiting now? And I said, absolutely. And literally the next Sunday, there was a new person sitting in that chair. And now if you'll look, there's a new person sitting, there's a volunteer sitting in that chair every single week. When I say every single, but next week it'll probably be you, right? Okay? Next week it'll be you? Okay. Look at the hosts. We had an issue with getting hosts. Look at how good our hosts are doing now. They're being supported. They're being raised up. They're being recruited. They're being helped. They're being ministered to. He's done a small group. He's done other things that aren't even on this list that he'll keep doing. Okay, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just to give you an idea. But Sunday morning, strategic. Again, the strategic is not the strategic without him in it. That's just the way it is. I don't know If this doesn't work out somehow, I don't know what to do. I, honest to God, don't know what to do. And I always know what to do if it doesn't work out. I always have a plan B. And I simply do not know. I'm at a total loss at this point. The secondary issues, tech and back of the house leadership, these top 4 things in the small group and so on, this is more than a job description of work and time and effort. So we just say, look, there's other responsibilities you have, but thank you to Josh Morris and other people who are just doing it without, because he doesn't have the bandwidth to get there. But if he does, that's where he's to go next. See it? All right? Now, I got to tell you, I want you to go here now. Pull out this sheet. Front and back, HR. When I talk about how come are things going to be different next year at this time, or however long why are things going to be different? I will not be able to describe to you in enough detail the fullness of what this is, so I'm going to have to do it quickly. But here's what it boils down to very, very simply. If you read right now, you're going to get impossibly confused. We wanted to show you how complex this thing is, but I'm now going to make a complex thing simple for you. Here's what this is. Every person in this church will have the opportunity to have someone help them in their discipleship. We're not going to force people to do it. But if you were a company and you were trying to get people, you were trying to help people, if you're in a gym and you're trying to get people to do something, you have a bunch of trainers around, right? You have somebody who's going to help a person where they get stuck and get them better and do that kind of thing, right? Well, we're supposed to be doing that in the church. The number one thing we're supposed to be doing, everything we're doing in this church has to do with what? Increasing discipleship. And so here's what MOVE has taught us. Reveal, that survey you did, thank you for doing it. And the MOVE book and everything that we're doing. Here's what it's taught us. People get stuck in very identifiable ways. And there are solutions to where they're getting stuck. And so instead of having people grow to a certain place and then just die, my faith, I used to read the Bible, but it just doesn't seem to come alive to me, and I don't know what to, what I mean? Instead of having that, what they'll have is somebody, a coach, an HR person. I'm calling it HR because of Jack Welch's concept. It's not the HR in a good business is not the one that decides your insurance policies. It's the person that says to you, what are your hopes and dreams and aspirations, and how can we tailor a journey in this company that makes your dreams and aspirations come true, that we get the most out of you because you're getting the most out of us. That's what HR is supposed to do. That's what Jack Welch says it should do. That's why we're calling it HR right now. We'll probably change the name because who knows what that all means. But the point is right now we're calling it HR. Now, think about the impact that's going to have. When we've got this group of people who are not, now watch, they're going to do 2 things. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to give Ralph a call or go to coffee with him. And they're going to say, how you doing? And they're going to have a little list of things that they're checking off because we know the identifiable areas where they might be getting stuck. And then he may tell us something that's not on that list, right? But we're going to have a conversation. The HR person, one of these people, is going to have a conversation with him. And they're going to say, how are you doing? Where are you stuck? And then when we identify where they're stuck, they may be stuck in 5 different areas, but when we identify the one that seems like the next one to work on, here's what the HR person does. We will have everybody in here and we'll say, it turns out that you're really good at devotionals, and he's stuck on devotionals. So we're going to get you together with him because we know the 2 of you, and we know that you guys all match good. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put the 2 of you together, and he's going to help you grow. Now watch what's just happened. First of all, every person in this church is being discipled better. And we're asking every person in this church to bring your gift to help someone else get unstuck. Do you think that'll make a difference? Now, when you hear that, does that seem like something that churches should be doing? Can anybody tell me a church is doing it? This is one of those, we're getting the results that we're getting because we've got the wrong structure. This is the dumbest, simplest, most obvious idea I've ever thought of, God's ever brought me, and I think this will make steering teams and people preaching seem like superficial compared to the change this will make in people's lives. When we start being able to walk alongside people and give them resources and help in order to keep them moving on with God to where their walk and their life is dynamic in Christ and getting more and more dynamic, that's the win. Now here's the problem. Amy is slammed. JJ is slammed. Wanda is slammed. I had to go to the team and say, I need you to give me Jesse. And I need you to give me Jesse. Why? Because when you look at his gift mix, he's the right guy for this task. Great strategic, great execution, good relational. He's the right guy for this task. He's the right guy to ideation it. This is his work. I gave him this work to do, and he's still got lots of things on his plate that he's doing, right? I gave him this thing, and what did we give it initially? I think we gave it like a week or 2 weeks or something like that to get a first draft done. A couple weeks to get the first draft done. How many days was it before you had it back to me? Was it the next day or the next day? In a couple of days, he had a full draft back to me of how to take it step by step in order to turn it into a reality. Can I tell you how long that would have taken me to do and how different it would have looked in this simple little document, which is not so simple, but much more simple than I would have made it? Do you get it? I think we're undertaking the most important thing that we're supposed to be doing as a church on two levels. One, this HR thing I think is just super important. And two, this team and distributing the weight across this team so that the church becomes, think about it, we've picked people intentionally with very different gifts. That makes it harder to form a team. But what does it do in the end? It makes us able to reach more people because we're not niched into one little, we can do really well with this kind of person, but we don't do so well with these kind of people. We now have a team that does well with everybody, every type of person out there, and the differences in their personalities and just the work that they had to go through in order to really understand each other because they were coming at it from such different areas. And I watched all this when I was sick, and I said, God, you're doing the most amazing thing. You've brought four completely different people together so that we can truly be everything that you want us to be. So I love you. I'm sorry. I really don't want to do this meeting. I don't know what else to do. And that's not true. I went to the Lord and I asked him what to do, and this is what he led me to do. I don't know anything. All I'm telling you is we're going to open it up now for some Q&A. You know what I mean? Start asking questions. Hopefully I've told you what's happened, what I think God's doing in it, and what we plan on doing about it so that we're not back here again in a year. Okay? All right? Is that good? So, Jeff, would you help me with the mic here? Thank you very much. And what we're going to do, by the way, is we're going to be doing the first little moment of this, the first few questions of this with Jesse here. And then we're going to ask him to leave the room so that somebody could ask a question that might be more difficult and would be inappropriate for him to be here. And I want to tell you, some of you are already like, oh my God, I can't believe you have Jesse in here for this because it's so embarrassing to him and all that. But here's what we are. We're a family. We do things open and honest. We do things the only way that we can think to do them because it seems to be the most integrous way to do it. Have the most integrity. I don't think integrous is a word, is it? People use it all the time, but it's not a word.
And timing-wise, just so that we have an idea. And
I love you,
have
but
it-
we're going to be at least a quarter after. I'm just telling you.
No, I'm just
Help me.
saying. I told people one-ish, so I just wanted to kind of tell people.
Okay,
I wanted to give them an idea of what time we're.
quarter after,
And
hopefully.
then you have an FD people meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, quarter after you guys.
okay.
I told you one, but it's probably going to be quarter after.
Go ahead. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
That's exactly what Amy does for me, by the way.
So I just have 3 additional questions for context.
Okay.
1, how urgent is the need, assuming the solution is just money? 2, how long did it take you to raise the money the first time? And 3, what did you do besides the offering piece to raise the money? Just for additional context.
Number 1, this month. Okay, we're okay this month. We'll be a little short, but we're okay. We wanted to get to the end of March, and we can get to the end of March. So it's this month that we need people to make a decision. But I'm really hopeful that people will literally take time to pray about it together today and fill out some cards. Because right now, this is in your heart. You know, I'm asking you, how urgent is it is what you're saying. I don't want to put a pressure on you that makes you give because of some hairs on fire. But this is a real need. We need this to be, really in 2 weeks, we're going to need to sort of understand whether or not we're going to be getting even close to the numbers that we need in order to support and so on. What was question number 2?
Oh, it was,
raise,
A month. It actually took us a couple of weeks. The first one went really well. People gave up front. Actually, some people by the Lord gave even before it had started, feeling like God had led them to do something. And so that was a really cool thing that helped us out quite a bit. What was the last question?
So besides just asking people to contribute towards that, did you do any type of special events or fundraising outside of that?
We didn't. Sandy?
I really trust your analysis of the staff, and I can see that Jesse is an asset and has great gifts. And the last time we had this meeting a year ago, I brought up how I felt that God was saying to me, or at least I thought so, that the church, first of all, really needed to support, as a whole, our missionaries. And several people agreed with me, but I went ahead and contributed and was trusting God to bring in the money for Jesse. And I'm wondering if what I had on my heart then is true about God and wanting us to support our missionaries as a church. How would he show that to us? I mean,
I can tell you something really cool that's going on. I hope all the council's here. I know Michael got sick and he's coming back. But I think the rest of the council is here, right? Roger and Mark and, okay? But here's the point. The council's doing the coolest thing that I've ever seen. I'm kind of out of council now, which is awesome for them too. And I come in and I just kind of the first half hour and they can ask me any questions and I say anything in terms of vision, but then they really are running it. But here's what they did. They're starting to pray. And they're starting to pray the week before the council meeting for the church and what God's wanting us to do. That's what I always did. And I filled that role. And now that I've stepped out, the council's starting to do this. And so I would take to the council and say, what she's saying I think is a really interesting point. Is there something God's asking us to do on missions that we need to address? And if there is, we should do it. And I want to say, I feel more confident that council will get this right now that they're praying than I ever have before. And not that I didn't trust the council before, but I just have to tell you, the fact that they're praying like this, there's a miracle that happened in the last prayer that the other council members don't even know about. Something they prayed about and that God led them to in terms of discussion is something that happened behind the scenes to already make it possible, having to do with this thing that you guys were talking about then. So I'm just telling you, God's moving, and I want to say, would you guys please take seriously what she said and pray about that? Because in the end, we got to do what God's telling us to do. Okay? Thank you, Sandy. Did I answer your question? It's the only way I can think to do it. If you got a better way, email. Go ahead.
Just because I don't know a lot about church finances, so may seem really silly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why are we doing fundraisers for Jesse? Why don't you budget for his salary throughout the year?
We just don't have the money. We just don't have the money to do it. We're like every other church. If people tithe 10%, we would absolutely not be here in front of you because it would be about 3 times the income that we have now. Actually, it'd be best guess is it's probably close to 4. We're probably somewhere in the 2 to 3% range is what we tithe at this church. And if people simply gave the 10%, as I think is incredibly biblical and the spirit of it, what the Lord wants and so on, we would not have to be doing this. I think to a very real extent we do this because, churches are operating in places of need that I don't think God intended. And then what do? I don't know how else to do it. Was that a bad answer? I got some bad faces on that. What? No. What I'm saying is if you took all the income of the church, people are tithing, it looks like, it was hard to tell because we don't know what all of you make, but the best guess analysis is somewhere around 2 to 3% is what this church is giving. And by the way, that's twice the national average. 1.7 is the national average. Okay? So we're actually on the high end of churches that give. But even at that, we wouldn't be doing this and we'd be able to budget if people were simply tithing, bottom line. And much more than that. I've always argued to you that the end result of a lot of tithing is not gold fixtures in the bathrooms, which is what a lot of churches do with it to their harm. The end of people tithing is us being able to do stuff in the community that makes God be known. That's what it really is supposed to be going to. It starts with having the support internally, but then it's supposed to overflow into the community in ways that the community doesn't say the church is always looking for money. What they say is, my God, if the church wasn't doing that, we'd be in trouble. Look at what they're doing. Now that's what God wants to do with the tithe, and that's why I want everybody to tithe, because I want us to be that church. But it would be part of our budget, and we're trying our best. I do want to say something. I have worked at several other churches in various capacities, on the councils and as a pastor and so on. I have never seen a church run leaner than we do on cost than any church ever. JJ, your budget at this church for children is what percentage of the normal budget that you had at the other churches you worked at?
I can't give you a number, but I can say I've never worked with a church where the mortgage is not one of the biggest drains on the tithe. That because of how, a lot thanks to Julie, when she's Julie, not Amy, all the work that Julie does to bring in tenants, I've never been in a church where the whole mortgage is covered by that.
Yeah.
And so that's a unique thing that allows us then greater freedom in our budgets.
Yeah.
But they are cut back pretty lean already, so then something else would have to cut in order to fit into the budget. We have to not do something.
Let's take this other microphone from wherever it is so that if you guys have to talk, thanks, that we can get it on tape, because that was important. Okay, go ahead. We're just going to do a couple more questions with Jesse, and then we're going to release him. Who's next? Chris?
Yeah, I kind of want to follow up on that, but before I do, thanks to you for your sermon. Now we know why most of your strategic team are women.
That occurred
No
to me
offense,
during the
Jesse.
sermon.
With all due respect to Jesse.
That occurred
But
to
I
me.
do want to follow up on that question in your answer, which I think was a good answer. But, you know, a year ago, the expectation I had was, as a result of Jesse coming on board,
Right.
that there would be a growth in the church with his
That's right.
skills and emphasis and a younger, appealing to a younger set.
Yeah,
And I speak perhaps for the older set.
yeah.
So the question is, was that an unrealistic expectation? There would be an increase in the base,
No.
the population, and if so, then are we going to be faced with the same thing next year?
Well, I tried
And
to
where are we
answer-
going with that?
I tried to answer this question when I talked about JJ and what happened with her. And it would have happened with Jesse too, because he would have been working on HR a year ago. That's the project that we started with him. I said, I want to do HR with you. Okay? But then what happened is when we did the shift to strategic team, it basically took about 7, and then when you add the wedding and Christmas in, it took about 8 months out of the year where none of that dynamic was in play anymore. Because he wasn't doing what JJ was doing. He wasn't building a big program. He wasn't doing the out front thing that was raising up more people, causing more people to be here, causing our tithe to go up. What I want to say now is the reason why I hope and pray and think and can stand in front of you with integrity and good conscience and say, I believe we won't be back here again, is because he's going to work on youth and HR. And when he works on youth and HR, I think that that's going to cause what's already happened, by the way. We have grown since Jesse's come on. And there has been a younger demographic that's been kicking in. So some of this is already in place and is already starting out. We're just not there. So we got to get there. I see several questions. Let's go ahead and go to Michael because he was first, and then we'll come back to Dee, and then we'll hit. And as soon as I need to release him because we're going to need to go. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So this question is for Jesse, not Kurt.
Good.
Jesse, you shared a bit with us what your heart was. Given that you've been here a year, how has that changed? And can I just say, going forward another year, what's your heart for this church, for this people?
So I just want to make sure I understand the question. You're asking what my heart was when I first came here a year ago, how that has changed, and what it is moving forward?
Yeah, if it has changed, how so? And then just what it is going forward in the next year or two.
Well, I think the primary thing that changes is when you first come to a place you don't know a lot of people, and you believe that you'll like them and get to know them, and then a year later you get to know them and like them, and you feel like you're a part of the culture and the community that's there. So I believed and trusted would happen because that's happened before, but I feel that in a much more tangible way a year out, if that makes sense. Beyond that, everything that I said a year ago would still stand about the hope for discipleship, how much Kurt and I were lockstep on that and what we'd both heard from the Lord. And as I look at HR and some of the things that we're talking about, I go, man, I haven't seen anyone else try that solution. And so I've seen us, talking now about where we are and moving forward, come up with a strategy. So you saw on that chart, all the strategic thought that's gone into both strategic team, how we handle the church together, how we cover it, and then how we move forward with the strategy to disciple people. And what we're missing is the whole execution half of being able to walk that forward now, which is where you get all of your measurable results. And so, my heart in the next year would be to test out and move forward with the things that we have from an execution standpoint and learn as we go through it and see the results that come naturally as you start to move forward in those strategies. Did I answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got Jen in the very back, too. I don't want to release him too quick, because did you still have a question, Dee? Sorry about that. Didn't mean to go all the way to Jen. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
He doesn't know.
I'm just going to ask, is it fair to kind of reframe the way we're thinking about this to say that what actually happened is Kurt was very, very ill, and we needed someone to pick up the slack while Kurt was ill, and Jesse stepped in not knowing anyone and made it so that none of us felt the pain of Kurt being very ill. And we're finally at the point where we will be getting 2 people for the investment that we've made.
Interesting.
That really what we did is we were able to, in some ways, fund some sort of sabbatical for Kurt while he recovered from pretty serious illness.
Jen, quickly, I want to call you and raise you on that, because there's enough people, we're enough of a family, and I share enough that those of you who know me well know that this is true. The kidney stones and the things that I went through was not what was really wrong with me. I was ill for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was in bad shape for 2 years before I got sick. I mean, I was just exhausted and just absolutely worn to a nub. And, I couldn't give it to anybody because there was nobody to give it to. And there wasn't something, or at least I didn't feel responsible in giving it because there wasn't enough structure there. And when God brought that team together and I saw that thing and everything else, I just think that God came to me and said, I'm going to make you well now. And I got to tell you, my life has changed so much in the last year. It's unbelievable. I'm so much healthier than I was 2 years ago. When I went on that cruise, and some of you remember that, when I went on that cruise, I was, my threefold, you guys I think are here, every month I would come to the threefold and I would say what to do if we do lose. It's not just if any one of the 4 go. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm back to square one going, I don't know what to do now. So sorry about crying there, but thank you for the question. Let's go to Kelly and then let's come to Dee. Okay.
Hey, first, I want to thank you all for getting up there. I know that ain't the funnest place to be this morning. And it takes a lot of courage to sit up in front of your family and do what you're doing. And the second thing I wanted to say is, there's never been a day where I put a dime in the bucket and God didn't give me back. Multiple times. He's faithful at that. And, if anybody hasn't tried it, try it because it works. It says test him on it. And, God's one of them people that'll pay you back, multiple times.
Amen. Dee? Dee. Let's do Dee first because she's been waiting quite a long time.
Well, I was just looking at your long chart, and, they mentioned that you didn't put missions on there, and you've got prayer with nobody being responsible. We do have people that are leading it, but, you lead by example, you guys. We haven't seen you at prayer night for months and months and months, maybe 6 months, maybe more. If you lead by example and show us your vision each time, how that multiplies.
Somewhat defensively, let me just say, we've asked for the prayer night to go to an earlier time because what happens is Tuesday is a very, very full, long day for us.
We all work too.
I know, but 7 or 6:30, we were just asking it to go back down to 5:30.
How about
so
7?
That people, because what happens is we're finally done with this long day and everybody's exhausted, and it's just tough.
You're not alone.
I know that. Really? Well, that's some of the pushbacks that we've argued 6. And yeah. In the summer, it's totally different. In the summer, the sun's out and people have more energy. And I'm sorry if I answered poorly. It's something that we talk about quite a bit because we're trying to figure out. We talk with Babette about it. I don't know if she's here, but we've talked with Babette quite a bit about how to get it to where it actually will work so that people, I get it. But Sorry. Where are we going next?
I see like 3, so.
Well, all right, just because, sorry.
Personally, I couldn't imagine not having Jesse at the church. And I think God, bringing the illness to Kurt was a reminder that he needed to stop doing it all on his own. And I can say for, myself that Jesse and I become close. And not just for how my relationship is, with him, but what he does for my children. This whole idea of giving and tithing is so self-serving in so many ways. I mean, it's amazing that we live in a culture that we just take so much and then just think it all runs magically by itself. It's fascinating, and there was a time I didn't tithe, and I could have given you biblical reasons for it, and there was a time that I didn't tithe and give, and I could have shared why it was okay, and theologically speaking, and then I finally let God crush my heart in this and just say, I'm going to suit up and show up and just do what he's asked me to do. My income has, quadrupled since that time has happened, but this isn't about that. It's more about the lights don't just turn on because we flip the switch, My kids don't get the counseling, spiritually speaking, that they need because they just show up. The food doesn't magically show up. It's donated sometimes, but there's gas and it's just,
Actually, the food does magically show up.
Yeah, it kind of
That's
does.
the one.
My point in saying this is that it costs
Zach.
something to have a community.
Thank you,
It
Zach.
costs something, and if we're given 2%, throughout the whole congregation, that's a shame.
Well,
It's just a shame.
I try to, yeah, thank you.
It is.
Let's come over to Joy and just go over this direction, and then we're going to have to come out of here at some point in time. Yeah, does anybody need, this is the way I got to do this. We're going to have to wrap up here in just a few minutes. We're going to do something where we'll go, which room are we going to?
You were going to go to your office.
If anybody wants to keep talking, come to the office and we can keep talking. But here's the other thing that I want to say. If somebody has something they have to ask Jesse, then get your hand up right now. If it's a question that we can take without having Jesse here, then we're going to have a couple of those because I want to make sure to get to them before we release. Okay.
Mine's either Jesse nor there, so.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess my question is just kind of, I know we live in a time right now, and it is such a paradigm shift. I'll tell you this coming from an organization that I'm in. I've been living 2.5 years of this change through my workplace. So I get it takes a long time. And one of the things that just kind of kept ringing true in my heart was when we look at a lot of these giftings and a lot of the lists, it's a lot of things that we're measuring versus what is the culture and what is the simplest of simple measures that we are measuring success for everybody on the team and at the church. And that's kind of what kept coming through, and I wanted to just pose that question, whether it come from the strategic team or from Kurt that has an answer to that on what the, how are we measuring
I want to say,
success?
by the time we're done with HR, we will have, for the first time I could find anywhere, and we've looked, we will have a way of doing that very simply to see how well are people actually growing.
Okay,
That
and
is
the
a
people,
primary
and
goal of this.
I speak candidly because I do work in the people in the service industry
That's
as
right.
well. So, there are the simplest modes of,
That's right.
you
Well,
know what I mean?
would you help him and show him what some of those things are? Because this is going to help us. We're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, because when I look at this, it is a long list, and it's a lot of lists of things to do, but I do just want to bring it back to that, what is that, whether it be 1 to 2, 3 measurables that we're taking away right now from the past year.
Yeah.
Whether it be like, hey, I think of it on the weight loss journey, how many pounds have I lost, or how many dollars have I saved, so.
So I think what you would want to measure as a church, if you're in the spiritual business, is spiritual growth of people and new disciples. New disciples is a bit easier to measure because it's who's new to the church that's growing, right? that's committed. You can see some of the steps they'll take. Spiritual growth is a much more subjective measurement, much more difficult to gauge. And so you've seen us try through the surveys that we've taken to gauge that. And what's fascinating about that very question is the project Kurt's talking about, HR, gives the greatest potential, I think, for measurables. It's actually built into the project about how are people growing, and are our programs and are the things that we're facilitating them with actually helping. And it enables you to look at each person's journey, and then as you get enough data over time with that, make changes strategically within a church. And spiritual growth is what every church tries to measure and measure accurately, and it's so, so difficult to get.
I would correct that. Spiritual church is what every church wants to measure and what no church is measuring. I don't know any churches doing anything to measure spiritual growth. None. This is a proposal to do exactly, there's a lot of things, but if you look at what the things are, it's literally developing exactly what you just talked about. So you're dead on that.
And then what do we do with everyone else that's slammed and doesn't have an inch to spare? You know what I mean? Like, if I know we can't lose one, but, I come from a workplace, too, where all of us, and we spoke, it comes clearly, we all have very full work days.
Yeah.
There isn't a moment in my day that I am not driving towards my
That's
goal, and then I have to leave and come drive towards another goal.
Well, I think this
that all encompassing, and I know from the workplace, I know, because I live next door to the church, how late these people are working, and it's hard, and it's almost, and it's ridiculous, but you know what, it's not ridiculous, because I'm expected that at my job. And, being in a younger generation where we have so many people that used to be like, well, I've got 2 assistants to handle that proposal. And now it's like, that's just me. I'm handling 80 proposals, 40 accounts, and I have a whatever $1 million goal to hit.
That's right.
So, how are we strategically planning ourselves and getting this team to a level where we can change at a moment's notice? Because that's what the world is expecting us to do versus the other.
Go ahead and speak to it. And we got to keep everything fairly short now because we're crunching and we're past our time, but go ahead.
Well, you want me to give an answer? I don't think there's an easy answer. I think we're still trying to find that out, just as all of you are in your workplace. Because we want it to be sustainable, we're trying to, the vision of Lake Sam is that we give the ministry away, which is not just vision of Lake Sam, that is scriptural, right? Because as leaders and pastors, we're called to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. But, I don't know, a year and a half ago, we were trying to do some recruiting, and I said, let's look at how many job spots we have in the congregation, and we have way more volunteer spots in the congregation than we have bodies. So a lot of you are already serving in 1 or 2 or 3 other places, and we appreciate that so much. So I don't think there's a simple answer, but there's also a constant desire on our hearts, and HR hopefully will help with this, to make sure people are serving in an area where it's not just, okay, I'm serving, so I check this off my list, and I know the church needs me to do it, but you're also serving in a place that re-energizes you and gives you life. Because when we're serving in the right spots, we're excited about it. I was just telling Anna, who's just one of my many team members, but Anna just had a baby, and she's exhausted, and she's like, everything we're doing with kids, she's like, oh, I'm in, because it's what she loves to do. So she's in the right spot because it's what she loves to do. Chelsea does the same thing. I can't wait to be with LSK, So we're always trying to figure out how can we find the right spots where we all have to serve over and above and beyond, but how do we do it in the way that energizes us and makes the best use of our gifts?
I
don't
see
know
a
if
lot
that
of
helped
people
answer.
kind of leaning on their, like, we're done. So I need to do this. If you have more questions, Jesse, hop out. If anybody's got a question that they have to ask in front of everybody regarding Jesse, this is going to be your moment to do it. Everybody else who has additional questions, the conversation continues. The rest of you, I love you. I would ask you to do something. I would ask you to pray. Look, it's easy for me to make a quicker decision. Sorry. I don't mean to press on anybody to do that. Thank you. But I would ask you, if you can make a decision today, thank you. That is incredibly helpful for the council and for us to understand what God's doing, right? In the end, that's all we can do is submit it. And if there's something you can do, I know for me, it's fairly easy. We'll continue to pray about it. But we're doing an initial, we're already giving monthly to Jesse, and I'm just continuing it. I already went on the website and scheduled it out for another, year. So if you can do that today, thank you. If you can't do that today, I love you. Please take this seriously. We'll probably do a follow-up email to remind you to get it in. I'm very hopeful that within the next 2 weeks on the outside that you just let us know, one way or the other, where you are, and then you go through it. Okay.
Okay, well, what I just want to say real quickly is that I don't really know either how a church is run.
Pen should be on
But
all over.
I
We need-
really
oh, here.
listened to Kurt, and after listening to Kurt, when he explains what the church needs to keep going, I trust Kurt, and I trust the people in leadership. And I'm real excited about this idea of mentoring. Personally, I can't imagine me mentoring anyone, but I'd love to be mentored. But I love that idea, and I think my feelings are that having Jesse on board is what we really need. And I'm saying this because not of me so much, but the leadership believes it, and I'm going along with them.
Is there anybody that has a Jesse question? Go ahead. Eric? Nicely done, Jeff.
Not a question, but I guess I'll call it an endorsement. But some of you may know I work back of house, and so that means I work opposite of Jesse when he was service coordinator, and then also I've watched as he's trained the service coordinators who then I work with. And then also, Christian and I go to the small group that Jesse does. And I just checked with Christy, and I would say that Jesse is 100% qualified to fill this role based on my experience working with him.
Yeah. Thank you. Ben?
How much of the needs of the church and what we're talking about him fulfilling, I guess my question is, does that line up with what he really wants? Or
Yes.
is he filling obligations?
And absolutely,
'Cause there's a lot to burn
an
out.
absolutely critical variable on this was this. Don't take a job because it needs to be filled. Take a job because you have some heart for it, you have some anointing for it, you feel like God has given you some ideas for it, and so on. And that was one of the things that was amazing as it fell together because of the way that these 4 very different personalities all of a sudden started coming. Now, we don't have everything covered yet. So there's still more need than what we've got, but all the major areas are covered. And I do want to say something. There is an argument that can be made like this. Well, just don't do as much. Then you don't need as much people to do it. Tell me what we're not supposed to be doing that's on this list. Because there isn't anything on here that isn't absolutely central and critical to what a church is supposed to be doing. I mean, it would literally be like we stopped doing kids, or we stopped doing youth, or we stopped doing missions, or we stopped doing, you see what I'm saying? So that's the thing, and I want to say it's been extraordinary to watch the team go through this exercise and really find, I wouldn't say everybody's the 100% perfect fit yet, but we're very close to that, to where everybody's got an area of passion, 2 or 3 areas of passion that they're working with raising up other people in. There's a long story on that one too, about where we needed experts, and now we've got them to help teams to get to higher places, which is even a better mentoring thing. But with that said, let's go to Hannah, and then I think we're going to have to get out of here, right, for the Russians?
I need the Russians to be in here.
Oh, would you do me yeah, Wanda and Julie, would you guys just man the door? Let's do that. And you can just, okay. Are there envelopes? Just fold them in half so that nobody knows, okay? All right? Okay.
Cards to fill out. I mean,
Yeah.
are there any more tithing envelopes that people could put?
Yes, at the door. We tried to think of everything, and apparently we didn't. Did you hear that, Wanda? We need to grab some tithing envelopes, and let's put them on the table. Let's put a table so they don't have to ask you, and we'll leave some tithing envelopes, and you can fill out something and stick it in that envelope, and then you can give it. How's that? Thank you, Wanda, for doing that. Okay, so she's going to run off, so we got to stall a little bit. You might want to go back there and man the door just for the time being, would you, Amy? I can tell you to do it because it's you, Amy. Okay. That was her saying she'll be home soon, John. That's what that was. Okay, who was it? Hannah? Go ahead.
So I guess the way
I'm viewing this time with all of us together is one, it's pretty powerful if you look at the people that are in the room that
Yes, it
even
is.
cared to come to this. They were obviously invested. We obviously believe in you. And
Amen.
I guess in my heart, I don't feel like this is about Jesse, and I don't feel like it's about JJ, and I don't feel like it's about any one of you. I feel like you as a team that are very strong and have led, at least me, I can speak for myself, in a powerful way, and my family, and I feel like I see that from other people. You've led us, and you're doing it through God, right? It's not your own intent, it's through God. And you're here, you've identified a problem that you need help solving, and that's why you've called us together. I don't feel like,
Amen.
I'm through the lens I'm looking at, and I guess what I would ask everyone here to do is not say, are you making the right decisions? Are you budget conscious? Are you prioritizing correctly? Is Jesse the right person? Or should we pick X? It's more so, you've come to us, you have a heart. I know you guys have prayed about this. You said this is where you came with your prayer. So maybe if we can have the hearts of trusting you and trusting in God and trying to solve the problem that you've presented us with.
Amen.
And
I
I don't
love
know
that.
if, I'm not great at understanding everything in the Bible, and then that's a huge growth place for me, but, if for whatever reason the 10% can't come or people can't give their own money, let's as a team, because that's what we are, a church team, come up with ways as we leave today, with ways to help solve this problem. What can we do to help them? What are ways that we can fundraise on the side? I have ideas of things I could do.
Amen.
Let's focus on that rather than,
It's awesome.
yeah, that's my thought.
I love what you're saying right there, because there is a big trust God moment here for sure, and that means all kinds of different things. You know what I mean? So what you said is exactly correct. Okay, is there anything else we're releasing right now? Oh, I want to do that. That's exactly where I was going, and I'd ask you to do that if you don't mind, and give her the microphone if you could. And then, like I said, if anybody has additional questions, you know where the office is? It's just right going out those other doors there, and it's right to the right. And we're just going to meet in the office, and we can talk as long as we want there. So go ahead, Jen. Thank
So
you.
Lord, in Jesus' name, we just believe Jesse is the man for this hour, for this time here at Lake Sam. And so, Lord, we just trust in you to provide the funds for him. Lord, you own the cattle on 1,000 hills, and we just ask you to bring forth the right amount for him and to provide for him and Jade. And so, Lord, we just give you all the glory. We thank you for what you've done at Lake Sam. We thank you for the rest that Kurt got, even though it was in a difficult way. But, Lord, we just give you the praise and the glory and the honor. Amen.